Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 147 of the Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week is the lovely and talented Amanda Farough. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm doing good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. This is like hour 4 almost of being on podcasts and streams and all that kind of thing for me today. It's been a busy Friday.
Jeez, I'm really sorry. I wanted you on yesterday, but you were also having a busy Thursday. I have a feeling you're the kind of person who's busy all the time.
Yes, well, that's what happens when you have 4 children. It's almost a StarCraft team of children. So
I mean, you almost have enough for a Zerg rush of children.
I mean, Vivian, my tiny one, counts as like 4 children by herself. So. She's very rambunctious.
So we were talking about other things, and I had the idea of inviting you on the show, and you were kind of searching around for different ideas, and you came up with The World Ends With You, which is a really interesting pick, and I think a bit out of the way, and I'm super excited to talk about it. But before we dive into it... I'm super
excited to talk about it, too.
Before we dive into it, do you want to talk about, like, virus news? Or
we certainly
industry
can.
News? I mean,
sure.
I always like asking guests or co-hosts, like, if there's anything interesting that has really been standing out, and I feel like all of the news is now related to this virus. So, da-da-da-da-da-da-da! Breaking
Surprise,
virus game news.
Yeah, surprise, it's now a COVID stream. Woo! Oh my goodness, there's been a lot going on in terms of both a lot and not enough going on in the game industry right now with regards to what's going on with COVID. Like, I mean, Mike and I have been talking about it. My partner Mike and I have been talking about it all week with on the Virtual Economy podcast, which we launched on Monday. We've been talking about things like the ripple effect that we saw immediately within the industry, especially because all of these events were canceled. You know, can you believe that E3 was like canceled a week ago?
Honestly, it feels like an eternity
it's a month.
ago.
It was a month. It was a month ago.
Like, just with all of the news that has been coming out, like, every single day, that last week feels like forever ago. At
yes.
this point.
Yes.
And
it's been a lot.
I know that PAX West hasn't been canceled yet, but I feel like it's gonna be.
It's likely going to be.
Like, this does not seem like something that's going to blow over in a week and a half from now.
No. Almost certainly not. I can't imagine that we are going to have any events in the near future because of social distancing, and that's just the way things have to be. I mean, what else are we supposed to do? We got to keep people healthy. I was anticipating PAX East getting canceled before it was, and you know, I don't know. It's been so much to handle and so much to deal with. Like, our kids are out of school now, all 4 of them, and I'm homeschooling 2 of 4 of them right now. The other 2 are on virtual school, so they always have something to do, but the littlest ones don't, because, you know, half of their days are playing, right? Because they're little. They're 7 and 8. They're in 1st and 3rd grade. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, I'm genuinely glad that that my home country, that Canada, has taken this so seriously. My hometown, which is way up in the Rocky Mountains, doesn't have any cases of COVID yet, thank goodness, because my mom is there and my dad. And my mom's both my mom and my dad are immunocompromised, so, but they're also really smart, and they've lived through SARS and H1N1 and all that stuff. But, you know, as we know, COVID is incredibly contagious, and you can be asymptomatic and still spread it.
Right, and the response to it has been multiple times more lethargic than to like SARS or H1N1, as far as I
Yeah.
can tell.
Yeah, it's a very different. I mean, it's still a severe acute respiratory syndrome, so it is a SARS kind of
Hmm.
virus, but it's just so much more intense. And there are 7,000 confirmed cases in New York, and we're up to almost 1,000 confirmed cases in New Jersey, which is where we live. We live in North Jersey, just outside of New York, and things are just it's starting to multiply exponentially, like every single day something is different, something changes. California, things are really rough, because people haven't been and also because people haven't really been taking this seriously. They're just like, oh, it's less deadly than the flu, and I'm like, no, more deadly than the flu.
Yeah, yeah.
More.
Like the amount of disinformation that has been spread about it is like catastrophic.
Listen to doctors.
Listen, honestly, listen to doctors over the United States government, because
Yeah.
like the government has, like, Trump was calling it a hoax like a week and a half ago, and the overall response has been one of, oh, we just won't test many people, and that way our numbers will be low, and that will be less bad for the economy. And we're now, like, all it took was like less than a week, or like a weekish, of people being in the beginning stages of this thing to bring us into an economic recession.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not going to be, like, we're not done. This is just like the beginning.
This is the beginning.
So
we're where Italy was a couple of weeks ago.
I was actually comparing some of the numbers, and we're doing worse than Italy.
Way
was
worse
at this time.
Yeah, we're doing way worse, because instead of flattening the curve, we've spiked it.
Right. Like, because people didn't believe it was real, and if they did believe it was real, they were told that if they were younger, it'd be fine.
But that's not the
okay.
case. It's really not the case, because I'm 33. I'm turning 34 this year. I haven't left my house since Saturday, and I am an extrovert. Like, I need people. I need to go out and, like, see people consistently. It's important to recharge my batteries. And for me, I'm susceptible to upper respiratory infections. I always have been. So if I get it, it's not going to be mild. And by the way, mild isn't a thing. Like, it's not mild, no matter how you slice it. You could be asymptomatic and still spread it, which means that, whatever. But if you get it, and you have symptoms, it hurts. Like, even young people like us, it hurts.
I feel like the messaging would have been taken very differently if it had not been, you'll be fine if you're a young person, but it had been instead, this will permanently scar your lungs if you get it and you're a young person. This will not be a pleasant experience where you will be, relatively okay throughout the process. Like, I was reading some accounts last night of people who had been tested and had it. And, like, one person who was, I think, 32 was denied testing, was told not to come to the hospital, developed a 104-degree fever, was
That's
still
like
not
brain boiling.
Was still not, like, was hallucinating, and then blacked out, and the next thing he remembers was being in the hospital, and apparently he had driven himself to the hospital, gotten out of his car, and collapsed in front of the facility. So, like, that's another cost, I guess, of when they say that they're prioritizing high-risk groups. That doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily be okay if you're outside of those groups.
No. And the vast majority of the folks that have been both diagnosed, and the folks that have been diagnosed with COVID, especially in Canada, like, this is just speaking from some of the numbers that my partner has brought home from her research, because she works in the medical field. Everybody not everybody, but a good chunk of those folks are under 50. And that's supposed to be like a lower risk group. It doesn't matter. Just because you won't necessarily die doesn't mean that this is something that you want to get. I don't care if you're under 20 and you think that you're going to live forever. Guess what, fam? Even if you don't live forever, if you spread that disease to someone who's immunocompromised, they are likely going to die.
Yeah, and it's really telling. Ashley in the chat just said, I'm 65, and a while back I was in the military working at higher organizations. I had an old bio-warfare manual. I ended up reading this 2 weeks ago and got better info on what to do than from the federal government.
Unbelievable.
Right. It's... And I heard this quote, like, I think yesterday, but it's as if it's like if George W. Bush had personally gone down to the levees during Katrina and blown them up in secret. That's essentially what Trump has done.
Yep. With
this disaster and firing the pandemic response team.
Oh, yeah. Did that, 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
Yeah. 2 years ago.
Unbelievable. The whole
and like
the
the reasoning
thing.
the reasoning at the time is like, oh, pandemics don't happen. It's fine. They do happen.
It's just we usually have a better response to it because we have a team in place.
Right. Like
an entire department.
The whole point of that department was to have overreactions at the beginning so that we don't have a massive widespread pandemic. Like you saw the same thing with like Ebola when it started coming here and people went into full lockdown. And one of the recurring statements I've been hearing is, when a pandemic response is seen as overblown, that's when they know that they have done their job properly.
Yes.
Because in retrospect, it will look that way.
Mm-hmm. As it's supposed to. It's supposed to look like an overreaction because perception in this particular case shouldn't matter. It isn't about public perception. Public perception is not interesting. It's not a data point that's worth paying attention to. It's just not. What matters is the actual response itself. So, I don't know, like being an immigrant to this country is already difficult. It is. And I mean, yes, I'm white. Well-spoken, whatever. I'm Canadian. I'm not like international. But it's already hard enough, and it's really difficult to be in this country with this government during this catastrophe. Because I look north to the way my government's handling things. The government that, that's my country. I live in this country, yes, but I have no real rights here.
Right.
Not really. And yeah, I look at what Canada's doing and I'm like, this isn't challenging. This isn't hard. Have a heart. Take care of your people. That's literally your whole job. Your whole job is to take care of your country and to take care of the people that need you. And you're not doing any of that? Really? Like, come on.
I mean, yeah, we've kind of wandered away from like game industry specific.
It's fine.
It does come down to, I think, that there is a fundamental difference. I don't know much about Canadian government or the ins and outs of that, but I get the feeling that there's probably a fundamental difference in where their priorities lie between Canada and the US.
Yes.
Because representatives in the United States often do not feel like their loyalties are to their constituents and the bettering of their constituents' lives. They are more loyal to where their money comes from.
Yeah, there is money in politics in Canada, don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as much. It's just not. And people and provinces will party hop because they're looking for the best party for the province. They're looking for the best party for the political riding. But it's parliament. It's a very, very different political structure. So anyway, getting back to our original point, and that's to talk about what's going on with the game industry. Things have slowed down a lot. Thankfully, the vast majority of the studios that I'm aware of, especially on the AAA side, and in the vast majority of indies, if not every single indie period, everybody's working from home. There were folks that were stationed in the United States working for international companies that have gone home. They've just like pieced out and gone back to Europe because it's safer.
Right.
And we are going to see the ripple effects from this hit this industry for many, 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 many months after it's done, because this is going to delay deals. This is going to completely kill deals, which is why Mike and I are trying so hard on the Virtual Economy podcast to highlight indie games and highlight indie studios so that folks know, hey, this game exists, this studio exists. Go and give them a follow, go give them a listen, you know, just like go see what they're up to. It's really important because there are no events this year. None. There will not be. There will not be a PAX West. I sincerely doubt there will be a PAX Unplugged, and that's tabletop industry. But we're looking at no BlizzCon. We're looking at no PAX West. We're looking at no Gamescom. Almost certainly no Gamescom. My goodness, can you imagine like 350,000 people? Like,
yeah, no,
that's not going to happen.
Especially like that's an especially international show too. I do not think that will happen.
No, I don't think so either. GDC Summer is apparently going to be happening in August. I don't know if that's even going to happen. I know they rescheduled it at the pressing X to doubt on that one. You know, I really do. I applaud the folks working on GDC that they made that switch so quickly, and that's great. And I'm glad that they were able to make that work with the Moscone Center. I'm glad that they ended up doing virtual GDC this week for folks that won't be able to make it in the summertime. But I sincerely doubt, I'm with Ashley on this one. Like, I would sincerely doubt seeing anything happen until next summer. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah.
Because people are just going to end up like, we're not going to see PAX South. We're not going to see, what's before PAX South? MagFest is another big one. Like, these are all events that indie developers go to. And it's the indies I'm worried about. Like, I mean, AAA will be fine. They'll figure it out. They always do. They're going to have to probably cut back a little bit, maybe. But even then, they're the best equipped to deal with this crisis. Indie is not so much.
Yeah. Well, so I'm kind of wondering, because again, this seems like something that's going to go on for a long time and going to have very wide-reaching ramifications for people like outside of games and inside of games. And like for now, it seems like a lot of studios have been able to kind of embrace work from home, and that's really good. But looking kind of down the pipeline, like if this continues, like we're already officially in a recession.
It's global too. Like it's not just in the United States; it's everywhere.
Right. And so, what happens if this continues? Like we're already in a recession after 1 week. You know, if this continues, like full lockdowns for another 2 or 3 weeks, we could be looking at, you know, the Great Depression too.
We could be looking at an all-time high for unemployment rates.
Right. So what I had a realization yesterday, but like, and it seems fairly obvious in retrospect, but when it comes to games, people won't be buying like Razer keyboards or anything except for like the biggest of hyped titles for a while. Anyway,
so we're going to see, this is from my perspective, and this is stuff that I saw back during the recession that started in 2008. Just as I was, you know, really starting to come into the workforce, which was, let me tell you, starting my career in 2008 was living on the edge.
Yeah, living through 2 of these really sucks.
We're prepared, at least. We know what to do. Buckle
I guess.
up. Just buckle up, because it's not going to be easy. Because
right.
The last one sure as heck wasn't. But I think that what we're going to start seeing is, unless there is some kind of universal income and basic relief for people to get what they need and to re-inject this economy, kind of similarly to what my country is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like luxury items, and let me tell you, video games are a luxury. They are not necessary. No matter what
right.
GameStop wants you to think, They are
Right.
not a necessity at all. And these are our jobs. These are the things that we do. Obviously, they're necessary for us, but as a consumer, no. This is you need groceries first. You need like to pay your rent. And thankfully rent and mortgages are like people aren't going to get evicted during this, thank goodness. But basic universal income is important, and that's the only way that folks are going to continue to buy video games and buy clothing that's a little more expensive, or do anything that, or like buy clothing in general. Like, for crying out loud, like why would you buy clothing if you're just going to be working from home anyway, unless you're streaming and you're on video all the time, or you need to look professional because, you know, work. There's no reason. Just like buy cozy clothes, I guess.
Right.
But we're going to see shrink. Massive shrink. And I'm not talking about in the indies, because I think that even though this is going to hit the indies a little bit harder, it's going to hit bigger indies the hardest. It's going to hit the mid-tier publishers and the mid-tier developers the hardest, and it's going to hit the biggest indies the hardest. The little indies, they're scrappy. They'll figure it out. They'll roll with the punches, and they'll be able to do their thing. But the mid-tiers that are very niche, I think that they're going to get hit hard, because if you don't have that extra money sitting in your pocket, you know, it's not enough. Like, it's not enough. And I agree with Ashley. Like, I don't have an MBA. I've got my street MBA, as I tell people. Like, my partner has like a real like paper MBA, but I didn't go to business school. I earned my business degree on the street, you know, by running businesses. This is like my third business that I've run. So that's I have a street MBA.
Well, like, that's kind of what I'm wondering. If we get to a point where there isn't a UBI, or there isn't like a program for to relieve this economic crisis, I can see a situation where game websites suspend their activities because they don't. Many of them rely on ad revenue, and no one's going to be buying ads if people can't buy video games.
Exactly.
And
that's a whole other conversation, a conversation you and I have had extensively about the sustainability of the current media infrastructure. But yeah, it's rough. You want to talk about video games instead?
Sure. Let's talk about a game that came out a while ago, called The World Ends With You. Which, oddly enough, released during the previous recession.
It sure did.
Back in 2007.
Mm-hmm. Well, just before the recession, but
yes.
Yeah,
just before. But things weren't looking great.
No.
So this game is by Square Enix, and it's kind of a co-op thing between Square Enix and Jupiter is the company that made Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. So it's basically a giant cuddle puddle between the two teams that worked on Kingdom Hearts 2 and Chain of Memories.
Correct.
And it's probably one of the weirdest games that I've ever played. Like, there's nothing else like this. You've never played a game like The World Ends With You.
There will never be another game like The World Ends With You ever again, because the platforms these days don't support it.
Yeah, I mean,
do you want to go into it? Should we dive in?
Yeah, let's dive in.
I'm
glad that. So for full transparency, I haven't beaten the game. I got about halfway through it, just because we were talking about it, and I had about like a day and a half to try and get through.
That's
get
fair.
through the game.
No, it is too big. Like, there's too much to do.
There is a lot, and there's definitely a learning curve for the battle system.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, it comes out of that weird time period where basically the DS had just been announced. It was 2004. They were trying to figure out, like, okay, what can we do with this weird thing that is suddenly going to exist? And Square Enix was just like, we want to make a game specifically for this weird thing and take advantage of the things that it can do.
Yes.
And so
And they
basically,
did.
yeah, I mean, it is one of the coolest battle systems I've ever experienced. And it's honestly kind of weird that nothing similar came out of like the early days of like touchscreen, like iPad gaming.
I think what the big difference is between what the DS was able to do and versus what mobile gaming was, its price point. Like now we see things like Apple Arcade, which is pushing, premium games in a subscription service, which is far more palatable for most folks than just going out and spending $20 on a mobile game. So, I mean, the market wasn't right for it. But also the technology is just not set up for that particular battle system. So to describe the battle system...
Yeah, let's get into that.
So on the DS, if you've never seen a DS or touched a DS, which I think if you're here, you probably have done both and potentially owned a handful of them. I know I owned a handful of DSs in my time. The deal is that you got your stylus and you've got the two screens. And the bottom screen is your touch screen and the top screen is your display screen. So the battle is actually happening in two places. When you are sitting down and you're battling noise, that's what it's called. It's called the enemies are called noise. So you are moving in a way that you need to be paying attention to what your partner is doing, your battle partner is doing, and what you are doing. So you are controlling two characters at the same time, one with a stylus and the other one with a D-pad. And yes, way back in the before plague times. Correct. I don't know if I have my DS at my desk anymore. I don't think I do. No, it is over there somewhere.
Yeah, mine's far away.
Yes, I mean my Switch is over here, but whatever. The big issue that any translation, any ports for this game had is that throwing combos up from your partner requires two screens. It's almost impossible to make that happen on just a touch screen. For whatever reason, like the touch screen doesn't have that, because it doesn't have that physical limitation of like, oh, I can't go up any farther, right. So you don't end up making the same mistakes. It's just, oh, this is a clear delineation between my battle and my partner's battle, and throwing the pins up so that you can have these combos. And it is the most bonkers system I've ever played. And it is the coolest game I ever owned on the DS. And there are a ton of gems on the DS, a ton of them. Oh, yeah. But The World Ends With You, there's never been a game like it before, and there will never be a game like it again.
Well, even so, I actually played the remix on Nintendo Switch. That was the version I was playing.
I have that. I ended up doing like a video about it for when I worked at Game Daily. Okay. I did a Game Daily.play about it, about like all of the really interesting things about the game. So like, it's just, this game has been on my mind so much.
So like, how is the battle system a bit different? Because it seems from how you're describing it on the DS, it sounds like it's a different sort of thing.
It is. It's a very different thing. So what they did for the remixed edition is they took the iPad version of the game and they ported it essentially over to the Nintendo Switch with motion controls. The motion controls are infuriating. They are horrible, and they should just be lit on fire and then drawn and quartered. That's how bad they are. I deeply dislike them. Motion controls, and I'm an old lady. Motion controls are never been my friend. I don't like gyro. I didn't like Star Fox on the Wii U for that reason. I'm like, just let me control it like a normal person, please. Like, come on. Just drives me nuts. So yeah, it's a completely different system. It just is, because there's no other way. There's no way to take the successes from the DS and port them directly to any other system that doesn't have two distinct screens.
Well, on the Switch version, you can also play it using the touch screen on the Switch, which makes it, I think, a little bit more palatable. Because the motion controls are infuriating.
Yes, entirely.
But I can definitely see like the potential when I'm playing around with the touch screen of how innovative and cool and unique this battle system was. But also I have a feeling that the stylus was also really, really important for just accuracy when it comes to
Absolutely.
controlling that.
And you
Because
don't have that on the Switch. Like,
fat fingers.
well, I mean, like, small hands for me.
Right.
So the DS was such a valuable medium, I suppose. A valuable vehicle, really, for delivering this experience, because yes, that tiny little stylus, although I lost a ton of them, they were super accurate. And between, yeah, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. You can use a stylus on the Nintendo Switch, but you can't use a hard-nosed stylus on the Switch.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, it just doesn't have that same precision. It doesn't have that same feeling. So I only played like 5 hours maybe of The World Ends With You remixed on Switch. I was so disappointed by it.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you can, this seems like it's the kind of game you want to play on the DS.
If you have one kicking around, absolutely pick it up on DS.
Especially like like we're talking about, like when it comes to precision, pulling off certain moves in the Switch version, it's very difficult.
Oh, it's almost impossible in some cases. Like, you have to, it's not even just your hand-eye coordination, it's the finicky nonsense with the control structure.
Right, exactly.
But this game is almost perfect on the DS. It's a weird, obtuse story because, hello, if you worked on Kingdom Hearts 2, of course it's going to be a weird, obtuse story. Nomura was involved, I think, so it was like, what did you expect? Did you expect it to make sense? It doesn't, and that's okay.
It's so frustrating. I find these kinds of stories so frustrating because on the one hand, all of this intriguing world building always gets me.
I know.
Like, gets me hooked, and there are moments of like genuine emotional connection that are incredible and amazing.
I feel so good.
But
like,
then it just kind of goes off the rails, and you're like, wait, why are you going off the rails? You had everything going for you. Come back.
Yeah, it's an obtuse game, but it's honestly, it starts to make more and more sense the more hours you put into it. But if there's no, like, that's the biggest issue with this game, and that's the biggest issue that I found with any games that have been ported from the DS that weren't ported properly. You know, this game could have been great. They could have done something completely different. They could have not just remixed it, they could have remastered it. They could have taken a lot of the old work that they'd done and completely reoriented the way that battles work. They could have thrown it between sides instead. You know, they could have like sectioned off part of the Switch, or they could have made it so that, I don't know, there's any number of things they could have done. They could have done like making shapes with your fingers instead.
Right. Or like better use of the buttons.
Or better use of the buttons.
Because the buttons, if you're playing it in the touchscreen mode, are almost not used at all.
No.
Which makes sense now that you told me that it was ported over from the iPad version.
I think so, yeah.
It seems like kind of a waste.
It is a waste.
Especially when they went the extra mile of not only like putting it on the Switch, but also adding like an entire end game chapter to the game.
Which I haven't been able to play because the controls are so frustrating on the Switch version. So what I would have loved to have seen is the core concept, which is so strong, and it is just so captivating and charming, enchanting, really, and done something more with it on the DS, or on the Switch. Not talking about using motion controls. Anyone that's using motion controls for something other than like a party game. I mean, it's fun in Mario Party. It's fun on 1-2 Switch, but I'm not going to use motion. Oh, I guess it's pretty enjoyable on like some racing games, but again, like I'm not going to use that for something like The World Ends With You, especially because I'm going to play that kind of game sitting down on my couch versus, you know, like standing up and being like, I have to move controllers around. Like, it would have been so cool if they just did something completely different. And I don't know, like Channel Blade. What was that game that Epic Games made?
Oh, Infinity Blade?
Infinity Blade, that's what it was. There was some cool stuff that they did on Infinity Blade that they could have, like, in terms of really taking advantage of early touch mechanisms. They could have done something really cool like that over on the DS, or on the Switch, sorry. Like, it just, take the precision out of it. If you're going to make it a mad dash, at least make it a mad dash that's enjoyable.
Exactly. So we should probably jump into, at some point, what this game is actually like about and the story behind it and such. So I guess from here on in, spoilers for The World Ends With You.
Yes. This game is old, so
right.
Yeah.
I had no problem spoiling it for myself so that I knew what I was talking about, at least a little bit. But yeah, it's how to describe what the basic setup of this is. You wake up in the middle of Shibuya.
Yes.
With no memories, and your main character hero is a misanthrope who hates everybody and doesn't understand people.
Doesn't get people.
Yeah, doesn't get people. And he wears giant earphones and, as a symbol of his isolation. His name is Neku. And he immediately finds himself, like, getting attacked by these weird, like, shadow creatures called the Noise.
That's right.
And then a young girl runs up to him and is basically like, "You're my partner now. Make a pact with me." And you're like, "Okay, I don't know what's happening." And then you learn that you can fight the Noise after you've made a pact.
Yes.
And basically, this game is divided into 3 different sections. The first section is learning kind of what is happening. And it's basically revealed by the end that you are in some kind of afterlife death game where you have died and you are all fighting for a chance to come back to life, essentially.
That's right.
So
which is why they don't have, like, why he doesn't have any memories, because, like, what are you gonna do with those memories if you're already dead?
Well, no, it's actually revealed at the end of the first section that the reason he doesn't have memories and everyone else in the game he encounters does is because in order to get into the game, you have to offer up an entry fee, and the entry fee is the thing you value most.
That's right.
And since the thing he valued most was himself, they took his memories as kind of like his identity.
I forgot about that. It
was actually a really cool and effective reveal. It's just really interesting because each game is supposed to last a week, and essentially each section of the game is 1 week in this death game. The game is run by these creatures called Reapers, and they have a hierarchy that kind of terminates in at least what the remix calls the Game Master. In the synopsis that I was reading, it's called the Conductor. And then above the Conductor is the Composer, who is kind of like the god of the death game world. But a lot of that is not information you get right away. Reapers are just kind of shown to be these assholes who want to kill you. Or not just kill you, but like erase you from existence.
Yes. That's the game. That's their aim in this game, is to ensure that no one wins, that no one makes it.
Right. And then once the game is like completed, only one person gets to come back to life, and the characters don't get to choose among themselves. It's just whoever the composer decides comes back to life from that group that finished. And so the actual game itself, each day, these people are given missions to complete, and those missions have certain limitations, like time limits that they have to be completed in, and then the players have to figure out how to complete those missions. So, like, for example, one mission might just be get to this area, or another mission might be like cleanse this one individual of noise. Another mission in the game that I personally liked is essentially you're going around and trying to make these pins popular.
Yes, that one's fun.
That one is fun, and you can't really interact with the real world.
No.
Except via indirect means.
You can listen to their thoughts. That's
Which
how
is
you
cool.
can. And that's really interesting. Especially like if you look back at what the world was like in 2007, especially in Shibuya, like it was pretty glitz and glam, and everybody was really into fashion. And I mean, it's still mostly the case in Shibuya. It's the high fashion district in Tokyo. But it's cool to look back on that and be like, man, was that seriously the teenage narrative back then? I wasn't that far out of being a teenager, but whoa.
Well, that's another aspect, is that Shibuya is very central to the entire story, and even how the game plays, because you have to play into the fashion trends, and depending on the trends of each given area, you get different bonuses based on
to whichever pins you end up wearing.
Right. Or like shopkeepers will respond to you differently if you're wearing certain brands. It's all very interesting and complicated, and again, you were kind of saying this earlier, but a lot of this really depends on how much time you spend with the game, because a lot of this won't be very intuitive until you get a number of hours into this game. Like, I don't think I really got what was going on until I was like 10 hours in. And
I was about to say, about 10 hours, between 10 and 15.
I'm kind of wrapping my head around what's going on and how these systems work, and I'm like figuring out the powers I like and which ones seem to work well. It's all really interesting. And the battle system itself relies on pins, which you mentioned. These pins have certain popularities because the pins are associated with brands in Shibuya. And so whichever brands are popular, those powers have a boost in certain areas. And so the game is constantly encouraging you to experiment with these different pins and figure out like what abilities you like and learn new ones. And in that way, it's kind of like Transistor.
Yes, that's true.
Though it doesn't seem to like connect lore with the abilities like Transistor does.
No, that's true. It is more surface level. It's definitely about the fashion, and you can tell that just right away when you, like, even just looking at our stream, like, that is some high fashion nonsense from 2007, and it's very like skater chic, which is great, and that's what, my goodness, 2007 really was kind of skater chicy, wasn't it? Between 2004 to 2007, they're just wow.
There's literally a character called Chic.
Yes, it's true.
But also,
yeah, it's
I just have to say, I love how Neku makes fun of himself at one point, or they poke fun at Tetsuya Nomura's design by like one of Neku's thoughts is just like, I wish I had more zippers and belts. It's just like,
yep. I don't know if that was a localization thing or not, but that was funny.
I appreciated it.
I liked it a lot. That was good. I always appreciate it when games poke fun at themselves. Just like, oh, yeah. Breaking the fourth wall a little bit.
Yeah.
But with a wink.
I mean, yeah, that was tail end of the Skater Boy period.
Mm-hmm.
Mithralist.
Yes, it was the Skater Boy period around there. Yep. I think that my last year of high school, which was 2004, was very much so the beginning of was very much so the beginning of the skater boy trend. So yes, that's kind of where I think this was coming from. And of course, Tokyo is so far ahead, especially Shibuya is so far ahead when it comes to fashion, that I'm sure that they had adopted that either within moments or before it became a thing at all anywhere else.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, this game did come out in 2007, but yeah, while the game was being developed, that was probably like what was in fashion. Maybe by the time it came out, it was something else. I don't remember what came after that.
You mean in terms of like the fashion movement?
Yeah, fashion trends.
I think that's when we started moving toward athleisure. Was after that.
Man, that was a real downer of a movement. Just wear sweatpants and be comfortable. You don't have to call it fashion.
Athleisure is just not a good time. We can have a whole conversation about fashion movements. I'm here for that too, but maybe on another podcast.
Yeah, maybe another time. Maybe we'll do, what's another like fashion centric game?
Oh my goodness. They're probably all Japanese. Because Japan knows what's up. I don't know. I have to think about it. Like there have been a number of like high fashion games. Like Bayonetta is
Bayonetta.
high fashion for sure.
But like, are there any that like incorporate fashion into the game mechanics in the same way? That, like, I know there has to be.
I mean, Pokemon.
For some reason, I'm drawing a blank.
Pokemon definitely does, especially Pokemon Sword and Shield these days.
Okay.
What else is like really high fashion that incorporates it into gameplay? Like, there definitely are things outside of The Sims that do that. Nothing's coming to mind right now. After the week I've had, my brain is jelly.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that come to my mind just right off the top of my head are like Deadly Premonition has like some fashion element, and I think El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron has some fashion element to
I 100% missed that game.
It is one of the weirdest things I've ever played.
That's saying something. Between the two of us, we played a lot of weird games.
It's one of the most visually stunning games I've ever played, and also the main character is an archangel that wears jeans, and the devil is a smoking guy in a phone booth, and it's just so bizarre and cool and weird. I love it.
Fashion games, man.
Fashion games. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Bayonetta is just instant fashion icon. So that also counts.
Yes, I feel like that counts. She uses her fashion to do glorious battle. Like, you gotta respect a woman who uses her fashion to do glorious battle.
Yeah, she really gets her enemies into hairy situations.
Oh, I see what you did there. Wait. Finger guns. It's funny because it's an inside joke.
It is.
So what else can we talk about with regards to The World Ends With You? What else are you curious about as to like...
I'm very curious as to where a lot of this goes, like the story wise. And I also read like kind of what happens in the remix ending.
And I haven't read it yet.
It seems like it's setting up for a sequel.
Well, and that's the thing, is that Nomura ended up coming out and saying, look, if this sells well, I want to make a sequel. I want this game to do well because I want to make another game in this universe. Mm-hmm. And from what I can tell, like, that's not going to happen. The demands wasn't there. Even The World Ends With You was always cult. It always had a very dedicated following of folks like me. Mm-hmm. But it's not a super accessible game. It's not an accessible game from a gameplay standpoint. It's not an accessible game from a story standpoint. Like, for crying out loud, I get things mixed up, and I've played this game through twice. So, I mean, that's got to tell you something.
Well, yeah, but, and this is just my big caveat to that, I would agree with you, except that in the latest piece of Kingdom Hearts 3 content, apparently, there is a section where you play as Sora going through the Final Fantasy Versus 13 world, like what was shown in the demos.
Okay.
And it ends with him waking up in Shibuya, which is indicated to be the Shibuya from The World Ends With You.
Well, that is a bonkers crossover.
Right?
Wow. Can you imagine, like, how... That would be exceptional. That would truly be exceptional, is merging those two worlds, which are both completely disparate and still somehow harmonious, into the same space. That would be fascinating. I would play that. I would absolutely play that. I would play a Kingdom Hearts style game in the world of The World Ends With You. I really would. That sounds awesome.
I mean, yeah, from what little I know of the Kingdom Hearts universe, and now what I know from The World Ends With You, I can see how those two would work together.
Oh, they work together so well.
And I can also see how it's kind of a brilliant move if you have your heart set on making a sequel to The World Ends With You. You just go ahead and include The World Ends With You in your massively popular Kingdom Hearts game directly. Because then, well, yeah, sure, the remix and the DS version might not have sold super well, but now we have this whole Kingdom Hearts audience that wants to play it too.
And it's an audience that's
make it.
Right? I mean, and it's an audience that's primed for weirdness. I mean, if we look at anything to do with the Kingdom Hearts series, it's all weird. All of it's strange, and I'm a big Kingdom Hearts fan, and it's all weird. A lot of it doesn't make sense. There was, I think, one of the first things that I did when I had my job at Mike.com is I edited like a 3,000 word Kingdom Hearts explainer. That was a lot.
And
but
that was
this
just
game
for like
needs
the
it.
first several games, right?
Well, it was for
not
everything.
Not even including 3.
No, it wasn't including 3 because that was back in 2017. But 2017? Yeah. Oh, jeez.
An eternity ago.
Yeah, it was about a decade ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. This year so far has felt like 10, so I don't like it's too much.
Yeah, between this and 2019.
It's just so much. That's why we got to keep banding together to talk about weird stuff that Nomura does.
For sure.
But I think that there's something to be said about that, is exposing Kingdom Hearts fans to the utter calamity that is The World Ends With You. Even if they pull the gameplay out of it, it's an extremely stylish world. It's fun, it's beautiful, it's interesting, and like I said, it's charming.
Yeah, and we haven't really talked on the style, like the presentation style of The World Ends With You yet, because it basically looks like a graphic novel manga.
It does. It's a hybrid kind of
like,
game. It really is.
Yeah, it's presented in these stylish, like very expressive manga panels, and like just
and everything's
with the words.
Everything's very bright. It's deeply saturated, so it's not like we're looking at things that are like, I don't know. Back in those days, it was either cutesy and weird or completely bland looking and violent.
Brown shooter.
So brown shooters. I got so tired of brown shooters, let me tell you. That's why I stopped playing FPSs. They're so boring. Except for Overwatch, which is not boring. I'm just bad at it.
We should play sometime.
We should, but I'm awful at it. I need you to know that.
I don't care.
Okay. Well, then we're good.
We can
play
then. Fun.
That's good, because I don't play anything competitively. Because while I am a decent gamer, as soon as you say, "Hey, Amanda, this is going to be competitive," I'm like, I don't know what to do about it. I just get real scared. But anyway, so the style of the game itself is you are either running around and it's this top down. Well, it's like a 3/4 view. Of your character, because the only character that you get to control is Neku, And Neku is, all the characters are all designed in Nomura's fashion, which is like an abundance of layers and belts and zippers, and it's just it's bonkers and it's beautiful. And the thing that, like, I love the exaggerated proportions. Just like I liked the exaggerated proportions in Bayonetta. It's the character designs themselves tell a story. Like, Shiki's character design tells a story of, like, oh, she comes across as this mild, kind of cutesy girl, but Shiki can hold her own. Shiki knows what's up, and she's gonna mess you up. And then you have folks like Joshua, and Joshua is stylish in a very different way, very buttoned up, very classic, very schoolboy. And then there's beat and there's rhyme, and they're very hip hop. So everything has, all of these different characters tell different narratives, not just about themselves, but about their interactions with the world, about how they're going to talk, about how they're going to react. And it's just that kind of environmental storytelling always gets me, where the character designs themselves have meaning. And don't get me wrong, character designs often have meaning, especially in these kinds of scenarios. But that's what the exaggerated proportions, the beautiful color palette, how engaging running around Shibuya is, even when you have to backtrack, is just, I love it. I just love this game.
Yeah, and like, we haven't even talked all that much about the story, but I really, 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 like, around the time this game was clicking with me was around the time the first week ended, and like you kind of get the full story about Shiki.
Yep.
And I was just like, this is great. Like,
yep.
I the reveal with Shiki is that she is actually someone else who was just filled with a lot of self-loathing, and she was supremely jealous of her best friend, and basically she wanted to be her best friend.
Yep.
And so in this underground world, she became her friend Eri. And like the entire time it is teased as if she is missing her best friend, but really she's just constantly comparing herself to her best friend and belittling herself, and kind of writhing in self-hatred. And it really just kind of recontextualizes the entire first 10 hours of the game, really, or 8 hours of the game.
Yep.
And it's really heartbreaking. And for someone like me, who I can very much relate to, like, seeing other people and being like, man, I wish I was her instead of me, this pile of shit. Like, that, I related to that really hard, and I was like, this is a genuine moment of pathos, and I wasn't expecting it in this game.
Right, because it doesn't seem like it's the kind of game that's going to go all that deep, and it really does. Like, when in the second week, when, and this is, I'm finally, like, stuff's coming back to me because it's been a while. In the second week, when Shiki becomes what Neku values the most, that's his entrance fee.
Yeah.
Shiki becomes his entrance fee. That's bananas.
Because the two of them genuinely bonded, and when Neku was like, hey, I don't care that you aren't your best friend. I like you for you, the person I've been hanging out with nonstop for the past week.
Exactly.
Like, you have these genuine skills, and those aren't coming from your best friend.
They're
those
coming from you.
Yours.
Yeah.
And then we also get a reveal where Shiki encounters her friend Eri. It, like, you can see people in the real world, you just can't interact with them aside from reading their thoughts. And you encounter Eri, and Eri is just talking about how she basically has, like, she's nothing without Shiki, because Shiki died in a horrible accident, and like she said some things before Eri died that she really regrets because it came across as horribly mean, but she wasn't trying to be mean. She was just trying to tell her, you know, you have this promising future as a seamstress because you're so good at sewing. But what Eri took away from that was you will never be a fashion designer like you want to be. And it's just it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And this is the kind of stuff that teenagers in general go through. Like, these are the kinds of emotional moments. I mean, like, yes, all of us definitely go through this, even as adults, but it's so much more palpable with teenagers. I have a 16-year-old now. And I mean, it's fascinating to watch that kind of growth as a parent and to have to step back and be like, she's got to figure it out herself. I mean, she'll let me know if she needs me, but she's got to wade through this and figure out who she wants to be, who she really is outside of her friends, outside of school, outside of what everybody wants her to be. Who is she really? So it was fascinating, especially playing this as a young adult, where I was like, oh, okay. And this stuff with beat and rhyme, that's the stuff that really hit me, because that's the kind of relationship that I have with my younger brother, where my brother would do anything for me. I just ended up having to, like, silence a call from him because he's calling me from all the way in British Columbia because he wants to hear about the sound of my voice and wants to chat. But the relationship between beat and rhyme is the kind of relationship my brother and I have, where it's like, yeah, I would do anything to save my brother. I would do anything for him, period. So if my brother sacrificed himself for me, damn right I would move in. Like, especially back then, especially before I had children, which now, like, you know, as a parent, it's completely different. Yes, of course I would want to do anything for my younger brother, but it's very different now. I didn't have anyone else back then. I had my husband, but I didn't have kids. So yeah, when Beat defects to the Reapers because Rhyme sacrificed herself to save him, that's what hit me hard, where I was like, I would do that. I would do that. I would do anything to save my brother. Anything.
Right. Yeah. He defects because he thinks that there might be a way to bring her back.
Exactly. And that's what he ends up working toward. And it's really, really rough. Like, it gets really emotional and really dark very fast.
Yeah, especially when you find out that this is a death game and that all of these people in it have died.
Except for Joshua.
Except for Joshua, who is a weird anomaly.
Yes.
Yeah. So my big blank space now is kind of how that third week goes, if you remember that and can talk a little bit more about it.
Oh my goodness, the third week, I gotta think about that.
Like, how does this game end? Like,
so the second week ends with Joshua sacrificing himself to save Neku from an explosion.
Right.
Created by one of the Reapers. But the problem is that Joshua wasn't dead. So Neku has to play the game a third time.
Yeah, it invalidates the last week of the game.
Completely invalidates it. So his entry fee, because he is learning to love the people around him, to value the people around him as well as himself, his entry fee is all of the other players. All of them. He doesn't have a partner in the third act at all.
Yeah, he is being set up to fail. Except
Beat defects. So he immediately defects because he notices Neku's all on his own, and he's just like, well, that's not fucking fair. Like, no, that's not cool. So he goes.
It's so great because Beat is built up over the course of the game too, where he at the beginning he is very much a kind of a tough outward character, but his younger sister is always just like, he's a big softy. Like,
he's quintessential big brother. That's what he is.
Yeah. He's like, he has a genuinely good heart and he believes in like good sportsmanship and at one point he challenges Neku to a race, and Neku doesn't even accept the challenge to the race.
Nope.
But Rhyme and Beat ends up waiting for Neku to catch up because
it was so wholesome.
It was really wholesome.
So yeah, like a lot of that is Beat recognizing, what do I value more? Do I value my values more, or do I value the maybe insignificant, almost insignificant chance that I can bring my sister back?
Right.
So Beat ultimately continues to prop up his own values and does the right thing as the quintessential loving big brother, and now he has another sibling, right? Because that's kind of the relationship that Beat and Neku end up having, is Beat ends up just being Neku's big brother again, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very chosen family.
Yes, it's very chosen family.
It's kind of what this game is about, is especially with the third week being everyone being the entry fee for this bet, for this game. It's kind of it's the evolution of Neku caring about just himself, and then caring about another person, and then caring about everyone.
And that's how it ends up being everyone is the entry fee.
Mm-hmm. And that's also, I guess, probably where the name of the game comes from. The world ends with you. If he loses, that's it.
It's true. It's very true. And there's even more to it, because the game the narrative gets a lot deeper in the third week, because that's when they meet the conductor.
Mm-hmm.
And the conductor explains that there are what's going on with the population of Shibuya, because they're all wearing special red pins in the third act that brainwash them into thinking the same thoughts. They're like harmonious thoughts or whatever. So it's like the same good vibes only thoughts, which is nuts, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody does that.
Those are the same pins that Neku was selling, like helping to get sold in the first place, right?
Yep.
Gotcha.
So they end up finding the conductor, and the conductor explains that he created those pins in an attempt to remake Shibuya, because the composer said, hey, do this thing. And if he fails to remake Shibuya, both he and Shibuya, which was his entry fee for the game, his price for losing the game, I guess. So like the price he has to pay if he doesn't do it right. Mm-hmm. He and Shibuya were just cease to exist. So it'd be like this big blank spot in Tokyo where Shibuya used to go, and just be gone. Like Shibuya, its people, its culture, the community, the fashion, everything just gone.
Right, because he is essentially the god of this one area. That's right. Whereas the composer is the overlord. Yeah, the conductor is pretty ominous. So the thing about the composer and the thing about Joshua is that Joshua is actually the composer. And in this third act, we find out that Joshua, because he returns the last piece of Neku's memory, because Neku got his memory back after, he ended up after the first week, and he and Shiki connected, so Shiki became the price for the second week. And the only thing he didn't have was the memory of his death. So Joshua returns that little missing piece, and he is the one that shot Neku. And this is just from what I was doing some research, but he shot Neku because he wanted Neku to be his proxy.
That's right.
In the games.
He was essentially saying to Neku, like, you are my avatar in this game. I'm still controlling you.
Right.
And because he wanted the conductor, to lose. So there's this big power struggle between the Reaper from, like, the big Reaper from the end of the first, was it the end of the first week or the end of the second week? No, it was the second.
Is he the big gorilla?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Then he's the end of the first week.
Okay. So
there's the math guy in the second week.
Right. So dude was trying to kill the composer. So he was trying to kill Joshua while Joshua was a human. But I don't know. This is where things get really convoluted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to remember, like, how it ended up going, because all these memories are coming back to me now, because, like,
because you just won a death game and you're getting him back.
Yeah, exactly, just stuff going on in my brain now. It's all I know. So I think how it ends up going is there's a battle that ensues because the conductor he doesn't end up beating Neku. Because he was trying to use Neku's friends against him. And
right. And Neku's just like, we're bonded by the power of friendship.
Yeah, because friendship is magic. I understand this. You understand this. So the composer, Joshua, ends up giving Neku one last challenge. And it's to end up killing Joshua to determine the fate of Shibuya. Like, are you strong enough to kill me? And so Neku doesn't make a choice. He just stands there paralyzed. He's like, I don't know what to do. And then he's back at Scramble Crossing, but he's alive. So the end of the game, and this is the end of the original game, they ended up, like, all of the different characters during this death game made a pact to go meet at Hachiko statue, right, in Utagawa, to meet with Beat, with Rhyme, and with Shiki, and they all talk about it. They all talk about what happened. He thanks them for making him a better person. He ends up addressing Joshua in, like, not directly, obviously, but saying,
just as kind of like talking to the air.
Yeah, like delivering a monologue or something like that about Joshua. And he's like, yo, I don't forgive you for what you did at all. I just, what you did was unconscionable. And, you know, I still find myself trusting you.
Yeah, this game weirdly deals with a lot of really heavy topics, and like it seems like what they're going with Joshua is, like, you know, obviously in the game Joshua is kind of a stand-in for God, but especially in this aftermath, it's like we have all been put into life, something that can only end in our deaths, and that is an inherently, I mean, is interpreted by a lot of people as something that would be inherently cruel to do, right? Or mean.
Sure.
And like in this situation, it's like, yeah, I don't appreciate having to be put through that death game, but
I'm kind of glad you did it, because I'm a better person.
I'll trust you. Yeah. It's like complicated in a way that, like, faith in a higher power can be.
Exactly. The whole game is complicated, and it deals with questions of death. It deals with questions of friendship, of self-loathing, of self-love, and trust, and neglect, and all of these, like, really important, heavy conversations that we've all had to deal with at some point in our lives, but that we thought about a lot. I know I thought about a lot when I was a teenager. These are quintessential teenager questions and quintessential teenager problems. They're just blown up because it's like, okay, well, the fate of many more people relies on us getting this right. So that's The World Ends With You.
And it ends with "The world begins with you."
Correct.
It's a very, like, honestly, this game I think maybe is superior to some of the Kingdom Hearts games, just because it has a much clearer structure due to
Yes.
the a third of the game taking place in each week. And I think that really does help. Like, it doesn't get overly complicated until really the close to the end.
It's true. It gets very complicated at the end, where it's like, okay, well, what? Wait, who? Wait, huh?
There's a power struggle between God and Reapers. Also, there are angels somehow, and how do they fit in? I guess
know.
they're kind of like Reapers, but they're more powerful, but they only appear sometimes. And then the remix chapter takes place after the main game is done, and basically introduces this new character, Coco, and Neku and Beat are both brought back to Shibuya again, and so they make their way through this weird mixed up world, and it's revealed throughout the course of the chapter that essentially Coco has summoned a giant noise that that this twisted Shibuya exists on, and Coco has some sort of vendetta against the composer, and Coco resurrects the Reaper, the conductor that was trying to kill Joshua, and that's where that chapter ends. The Neku and Beat manage to defeat the noise, but Coco escapes and resurrects the conductor. So that's where it ends. I have to assume that has some sort of implication that there's going to be a sequel, because you don't just release a remix that ends that way with no plans.
No, you really don't. We'll have to see. It really does depend on whether or not there's a market for it. And Square Enix is fairly risk averse these days. They're only going to want to fund something that is almost a sure thing, unless they're doing it through Tokyo RPG Factory. So
yeah, I mean, risk averse, especially these days. Again,
everybody's risk averse right now.
Yeah, linking back to our earlier conversation, like, I feel like going forward, a lot of new projects are going to be big risks.
Yeah. Well, there's
games.
Yeah, because games are a luxury, and et cetera, and with something like The World Ends With You, it's a cult game. So
right. Though maybe that's changing with like the success of Kingdom Hearts. Maybe
could very well be.
Yeah, who knows? Well, thank you so much for coming on, Amanda. Do you have any like final words to kind of like really sell this as one of the best games, period?
I honestly, this game it's such a soulful experience. It's absolutely worth sitting down. It's a fairly lengthy game to play on a mobile platform. If you are going to play it, don't get it on Switch. Seriously, don't do it. Get it on iPad or on Android, or do yourself the best kind of favor. Pick up a 3DS and play it there. It's not going to be in 3D, but the 3D on the 3DS is not why you want it anyway. You want it because it's a good size system.
Okay.
It's glorious. It's a glorious game. And you seriously will not regret playing it. It gets convoluted towards the end, but there aren't too many players like there are in Kingdom Hearts, where it's like, how do I keep track of Organization 13? Like, what?
I need a flowchart to figure out the bad guys.
Yeah, I need an org chart to figure out the bad guys. That's how bad it gets. You don't need that with The World Ends With You. It's a bite-sized story. It's still meaty, but it's still a bite-sized story. And
right.
Especially right now, where what we need is an abundance of friendship, an abundance of connection. it's the kind of game where it's like, man, you got to deal with a lot of heavy stuff on a regular basis. But hey, what if you did it with a really great battle system and some really stylish looking characters and Shibuya from 2007?
Right. Well, that was an excellent pitch. What do you have anything that you would like to shout out? You have a new podcast.
I do.
Where can people find things that you're working on and everything that's cool for you?
Okay, so a few different things. I have a brand new podcast that I launched this week with my partner Mike. It's called Virtual Economy. You can find it on Twitter at Virtual Econcast. You can find it on all major podcasting platforms. We were just approved today from Apple Podcasts. Hey. So yeah, that's huge. I'm really excited about that. We have had some amazing conversations with industry folks. We've spoken to Steph Tinsley, who works in PR. We've spoken with Matt Piscatella, who's an industry analyst. We spoke today with Victoria Tran, who is phenomenal.
Nice. That is a killer lineup of interviews.
It's true. And on Wednesday we had a conversation with Brandon Huffman, who gave us some really, really great information about some of the legal stuff that employees and employers need to be paying attention to during the pandemic. So if you've ever been curious about the game industry, if you've ever been curious about the business of making games, Virtual Economy we'll have 5 episodes out by the end of the day today.
And you just launched this week?
We launched this week. Yeah, we've done one every day. We have 4 next week, and then we're going to be moving down to a more manageable schedule of between 2 and 3 a week. But we got to take advantage of the fact that everybody's home right now. So
true.
That's why we ended up launching this week. People are starving for this kind of information. Like they're not seeing their people. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get a chance to sit down and have a cup of coffee at GDC. Well, what if you sat down and had a cup of coffee and listened to us instead?
Yeah.
So
develop those parasocial relationships.
Exactly. So that's Virtual Economy. I also run a very wholesome streaming show 3 days a week called Ready Player Mom. And you can find that on Mixer as Mixer/Ready Player Mom. And it's family friendly. Most of the time, sometimes we do teen-friendly streams. We're playing Ni no Kuni, Civilization 6, and now Animal Crossing. So
that is really cute.
It's extremely wholesome, and it's a very lovely community. It's not very big yet because we're still getting started, but yeah, the revival is going really, really well. You can read my work all over the place. I have work at superparent.com. I'm the former EIC at gamedaily.biz, so I have a ton of bylines over there. And just today, one of my pieces was published on Inverse about why console exclusives are so important for creativity, specifically about God of War.
Awesome. Where can people find you specifically?
I am on Twitter. You can find me at Amanda Farough.
Okay.
And yeah, that's apparently I'm really busy. I didn't realize how busy I was.
Apparently, weird. No, that's one of the things I've learned from just working at home for a very long time. Like, I will tell people, oh, I'm not very busy. And then, I end up working for 14 hours.
Thankfully, I haven't worked for 14 hours today, but I have been working fairly consistently since 1 o'clock, so without a break. Yeah. So I'm going to go eat dinner.
Okay. I'll wrap this up. This has been episode 147 of the Best Games Period. Thank you, everyone who tuned in live, and thank you for all of our dear listeners who are listening to the not live version. If you want to find us, we are over on Twitter at Best Games Period, and we would appreciate any follows or retweets. And you can also find us on most podcasting apps or streaming platforms. We're on SoundCloud, Spotify, Libsyn, iTunes, all the good things. So check us out, leave a review if you want to, and we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. And really, times are tough. Any little amount helps. So toss us a few bucks and we can keep this show going. We'll see you next week. Not sure what's coming up, but we'll find something to talk about. And we'll see you all on the Flippity Dippity.
Love it.
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you for
Ashley.
having
Toss
me.
a coin. All right.
Bye,
Bye everybody.